Welcome to the Craig and Greg Show, presented by Maximize Leadership. Here are Craig Owens and Greg Harris.
Hey, welcome back to the Craig and Greg Show. I'm Craig. This is Greg. We are here to help you get better as a leader.
The topic today is kind of exciting, a little nerve-wracking.
I'm a little nervous.
And it can be paralyzing, too. It's the subject of fear. And if you're in leadership, you'll face it. If you're in a team, you'll face fear. If you're in a family, you'll have fear. And we're going to kind of unpack that a little bit and hopefully help us live more freedom than over fear. So a couple quick quotes, and this is one. Don't be afraid because fate can't be changed. I thought about that. I thought sometimes we fear like, oh, our story will be forever lost or forever ruined or forever taken. And fate can't be. Right. And particularly of those who believe. You know, God has a plan for people. Fear can be such a paralysis, but he's not really about that. So I'm going to share a little bit of a sad story. When I was growing up, in the basement of my house, there were open walls to go downstairs. So during the day, you knew what was down there, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know Boogeyman, where that came from. It must be the anti-Marvel character, but the Boogeyman was everywhere. So at night, if I babysat my little sister, I would talk to her to go down to the stairs to get the pop, because I didn't want to go down there, because I'm sure between dusk and when I was thirsty for a pop, the Boogeyman got in. And it was unreasonable. And my sister still today kind of rubs my nose into it.
She should.
She should. It really was. I should have sent my dog down there. But fear doesn't have to make any sense, does it?
It usually doesn't make sense. Yeah. Most of the time when you evaluate it afterwards, I think one of the things that most people say afterwards is like, what was I so afraid of? Yeah. Once the lights come on and you actually see it. Yeah. But the thing is how can we find ways to turn the light on in the middle of the moment that we're having the fear? Mm-hmm. That's the hard part, because just the way our bodies are wired, when something happens, there's all these processes that take place in our body to prepare us. They call it for fight or flight. Right. One of the things that does is make us tunnel visioned
on just the fear.
Right. We become laser focused on that thing. And it's really hard for us to open up our eyes and expand and look around. And that's what we have to do when we face that moment of fear, is we have to be able to say, I have to look at more than just this. I have to consider something else.
So what you're saying is, in my basement story, I should have looked around the walls, not worried about who was going to grab my foot. Right. But a little confession on that story. I used to go under the steps and wait. And my parents would go by and I'd try to grab their foot. So I knew there was room for the Boogeyman because I played that guy. But
isn't that interesting? So the thing that you played, you became afraid of later.
Isn't that our leadership story?
Yeah.
Well, I don't like to speak in public. Well, you're going to have to speak in public because you have a team or you're making an announcement or something. So, yeah, we have to face those. So the challenge on fear, though, there's all kinds. I mean, I didn't look them up because I thought it'd be a little bit of challenge for pronunciation, is the phobias. Such and such phobia, this phobia, height and arachnids. And
I got one for you that you're especially going to appreciate.
Oh, boy,
because
here we go.
Your jersey number in college.
Oh, yeah, number 13. Okay. Love the number. It's very lucky.
Now, a lot of people have a problem with that. So
they had a problem with me?
Not you, but the number.
Okay.
So triskaidekaphobia. Triskaidekaphobia is the fear of the number 13.
I stayed in a hotel on the 12th and a half floor. I'm thinking, well, who engineers a hotel and doesn't put 13? And we know it's the 13th floor. It's not a space. Right. But the phobias are just crazy out there. And you're thinking, so how did you develop that? I get some of them. What would be some? Like fear of heights.
Sure. Yeah.
Or darkness, maybe spiders. But some of them are like bizarre phobias. And it's so made up, but really inside it feels so real.
It feels real. The doctors have said that there are only two fears that are innate that we're born with. One is the fear of falling off of something, and the other one is the fear of loud noises. Right. That that loud noise makes us startle. Any other fear that we have has become a learned fear, which I think is good news for leaders, because if it was learned, it can be unlearned. Yeah. And then here's what I think that people really miss is going to a third step, is then relearning a new pattern, because our brains, we're responding because we've always responded that way. It's that same path. It just naturally goes there.
Right.
We have to say, wait a minute, why am I going down this path? And then we have to relearn a new path to go down and be able to redirect our fears a different way.
I think that paralyzing piece for people, particularly if you're a leader out there watching this podcast and you have a team and you're facing maybe some negative news or some hardship, or how do we communicate around this, or how do we assemble our team and win? I think that's the challenge. It's so paralyzing, and it just stops you in your steps. And you've been this successful person for decades, and yet it still stops us.
We talked in another podcast episode about teams. I think one of the fears that a lot of people face is the fear of letting down the other people on their team. And so, and you can see it, when they, you shared the story about a mistake that you made on the football field and how you wanted to hang your head, but your other teammates came around you. And I think that that's part of that. When you're tunnel visioned on the fear, I think that's one of the things to expand, is to say, is it realistic that my team is going to reject me, that they're going to kick me off the team because of this one mistake? Why am I afraid of making this mistake, or afraid of how they're going to respond? Don't I trust them enough to know?
I think maybe back then, of course, I was 18 years old and green behind the ears, but I wonder about rejection. The whole aspect of rejection of, I worked really hard, I thought we were teammates, aren't we in this together? We're on the same team, we have the same goals, and then rejection just seems to be one of those raw scabs that's picked, when there is maybe something to be afraid of, or you've conjured it up. And I think that's the challenge, Craig, is for leadership, and I'm going to ask you some questions about, teams that you've led and you've had wonderful experiences, successful experiences in all shapes and sizes. If you had to say, here's 3 fears I've watched fellow leaders allow them to maybe get distracted for a moment, what would be those fears?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones that I already mentioned, I think there's a fear of letting somebody down. And I think for some leaders, that fear really stems from they almost feel like their authority or their position as a leader is going to be undermined because they made that mistake. Like, people would go, oh, I thought you were going to be way up here and never make any mistakes, and now that you made a mistake, you've come down here. In reality, what my experience has been is that the leaders that make a mistake and own it come to their team and go, I made a mistake here. I think that actually makes them more approachable, that the teams kind of go, wow, I wasn't expecting that from you. I thought that you always, but you're just like me. So I think that is a big fear of that one. I think that there's another fear that people, they hold back because you are leaving something. A lot of times when you're making a new marketing strategy for your team, you're moving to a different community. You're leaving what you know to go to something that you don't know. And there's some people that have this fear of, what if what I'm leaving is the best that it's ever going to be? And now I'm leaving something to go. And we begin to think in terms of worst case scenarios, which I have never experienced that. I've done several moves. Some of them have required, like, packing up my whole family and moving, a considerable distance. I've never gotten to a spot where I went, I just want to go back there, because everything, there's always going to be difficulties wherever you go. But I have learned from those things. I've grown from those things as a result of those. And then I think that the other fear that people have is really kind of the exact opposite. They almost fear staying where they are because there's a fear of missing out on something else. Maybe there's
FOMO.
Yeah, fear of missing out. Yeah, absolutely. And so people are like, well, what about this one? And what about this one? And they never stay long enough to make a significant investment where they are, because they're fearful that they could stay there and use up. It kind of reminds me of I read a story about a pastor once. His first pastorate, comes out of Bible college, gets hired by this congregation,
He's ready to go, right?
And he's ready to go, and
yeah.
he goes in and he preaches a sermon, and everyone, as he's standing at the back door, everyone that's going by, they're shaking hands with him. They're going, "Hey, Reverend, that was a great sermon, good word this morning." And then later on in the afternoon, his wife hears him in the other room. She goes around the corner, and he's crying in the other room. She's like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, I just told them in that sermon, I told them everything that I already know. I don't know anything else. I don't know what else to preach. And I think some people, that's one of the fears of, if I stay too long, they're going to find out that I'm only this deep.
Right, right.
And so I need to move. I need to go somewhere else because I might be uncovered.
Yeah. Almost afraid to be real.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've shared this story with you before, but for the audience, it's quite an embarrassing one for me. So a different generation, younger than me, and we had chatted about, we're in the lunchroom, and someone says, "I just got 800 last night." And I silly kind of thought they were bowling. That'd be a pretty good 3-game score. And she said, "No, it's Facebook friends." But I've always wondered, and I've said this to you and a couple of my other good buddies like yourself, I can hardly keep you happy or stay present to be the guy I wish to be for you. Mm-hmm. I couldn't handle 800 friends. But that's part of the fear is, hey, yes. I want to be relevant. Yep. I need to Photoshop my pictures so people like me. I need to tweak my resume so they're really enthralled with me now. Mm-hmm. And that's, it kind of hints to your comment on people changing a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. It's, if you had something to give an advice to someone out there about fear, what have you done to kind of face the fear? That one show, I don't know if it even airs anymore, Fear Factor, with some of the things like going into a casket with 500 spiders. Nope.
No,
I'm walking across glass. I don't know what else I'm doing, but that was a horrible idea. And to think that they're going to go in and face their fear, and how many didn't actually win the factor.
Right.
Like, yeah, because it's the biggest exposure you're afraid of. So, well, how do you handle that?
Well,
is there one?
Well, I think for me, one of your words that you like to go to a lot is curiosity. Yeah. That has been, if you go and look at the books on my bookshelf in my library, a lot of those books, you'd look at them and go, why do you have this book? That doesn't seem to fit for where you are. Yeah. And I guarantee you that what it's for, where it came from, if you went back in the history, is because there was something that I was afraid of. There was something that I said, I need to know more, because I clearly am afraid of this because I don't have enough information. I've become tunnel visioned on it.
Right.
My paradigm is limited. I need to get some education. I need to learn. And so that really, for me, has become the biggest thing, is to learn about it, to go and talk to somebody who's been there, done that.
I like that.
They've already walked through this. Hey, what was it like when this took place? Tell me your story so that I can learn some things from it. Go read a book and try to expand my knowledge base.
It kind of dovetails with what we do with our followers. We get a coaching huddle of 8 to 10 folks, professionals or folks that are getting into leadership or starting their career. And part of what we talk about in these huddles is fear.
Absolutely.
Right. So most entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they rarely launch. But great entrepreneurs are like, bring it on. Right. I mean, 2,000 light bulb attempts before we actually got one, right?
Right.
But I think that's the challenge, in the coaching groups is, so for you watching, the coaching huddles really do help us get over the hurdles of, this fear being one of the subjects. Absolutely. and dare to dream again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard before somebody had the acrostic for the word fear: false evidence appearing real. And I think that's the value of a huddle, a mentor, a friend, a book, somebody that can help you weigh that out. You can almost become the judge or the jury, and you're looking at the evidence. This is what I've always believed, and that's why I'm afraid of going forward, or I'm afraid of staying too long, or whatever it is. And now let me evaluate the other evidence and look at this and say, you know what, this evidence doesn't hold up in light of the other thing that I've heard.
So I'm gonna segue on a story because it's a great fear. It's something that appeared real to me as a boy. So my dad was my best man at my wedding. He's an amazing guy, but he coached me a lot and still does. And at his ripe age of, I won't say in the camera, but one of the games I was pitching was our team, for some reason, the league was named after insects. So it could be the bumblebees, the wasp. Well, we picked the wrong straw, and we were called the mosquitoes. It's one of those questions you think, I'm sure I won't want to ask God. That means something way bigger than that when I get to heaven. But mosquitoes would be on the list, like, why? Yeah. Just why? Anyway, so we were the mosquitoes, and the team we were playing were called the wasps, and they were undefeated. My dad said, you're going to pitch the whole game. And I says, well, what if they're good? He goes, what if they can't hit your pitch? I was thinking, hey, they got huge bats. They're a wasp. We're a mosquito. We're nothing, And I knew our team was decent, but they're undefeated. And he goes, here's what I want you to focus on. Not the evidence that doesn't appear real, but just what is real. So your catcher, he has an orange leather glove. Just focus on that. I don't care who comes to bat. So needless to say, kind of a fun story about overcoming fear with a little pep talk, kind of getting back to what the huddles in coaching can do. So my huddle speaker, my dad, my coach, he said, hey, just throw to the mitt. I don't care who shows up. We ended up winning, and I threw a no-hitter. And we had one error. I had one batter from a perfect game. After the game, I almost was shocked it wasn't the bad story I had thought of.
Yes.
So as you think about living life fully, my coach, happened to be my dad, spoke into my life, don't focus on the wasps, just focus on your glove. Yep. What do you have to share with the listeners as we kind of wrap up? How do we finish fully living versus hesitating because of fear?
I think that, I don't know if I can improve on your dad's wisdom, but I think that retraining ourselves, instead of thinking in worst case scenarios, what is the worst thing that could happen, to train ourselves to say, what's the best thing that could happen out of this? I like that. How could, what could come out of this that I wasn't expecting to come out of this? Not going, oh, why even try? Because it's, and you're like, well, we haven't even played the game. We haven't even launched the product. We haven't even tried this new strategy yet. And you've already pronounced it DOA. So, you've already come up with that. So let's change the way that we think. Is it going to take you out of your comfort zone? Yeah, probably. Right. But what kind of lessons are you going to learn outside the comfort zone that you wouldn't learn if you just stayed where everything's hunky-dory and you never faced any fear?
Sometimes I think we really do enjoy the comforter, some throw blanket we have or a stuffed toy we had when we were little. That something of that comfort zone really challenges us as leaders to go out and lead on the edge. Yes. And get out of that comfort zone. That's not the replica or the exchange of, hey, let's try something and maybe you fail. If you don't, you'll never know.
Absolutely.
Finish up.
Well, one of the things that Greg mentioned that we would love to have you be a part of is our upcoming coaching huddles. They really are. They're great opportunities for you to get with other leaders and be able to share with them in just really kind of an honest, very nurturing environment, though. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Nobody's going to belittle you. Everybody's there to help you get better. And so you can say, hey, look, this is what's held me back. I've been afraid of trying this. And Greg and I and the other people in the coaching huddle are going to be able to give you some encouragement, help you to have a different perspective. So if you go to our website, maximizeleadership.com, there is a form on there that you can fill out if you're interested in being involved with our next coaching huddle. And so if you fill that out, then we'll get back in touch with you and we'll let you know when that huddle is forming and we'll get you plugged in with that. In the meantime, we'd love to be able to field the questions that you have for us. So you can go to Maximize Podcast on Twitter. You can even post comments below on this video, and we'll be happy to answer those questions or maybe even include them in an upcoming podcast where we'll address the topics that you're sharing with us. So until next time, keep growing, keep learning, address those fears, think about them differently, and watch and see what comes as a result of that. We'll see you soon.
Get in touch with Craig and Greg through Twitter at Maximize Podcast or at MaximizeLeadership.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of The Craig and Greg Show.
I need ice cold.